101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you're overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541. Or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, are our laws against the use of obscene language outdated? And in the second watch, addiction alert. And for our social media question, we ask, should public figures, musicians and others be fined or penalized for using obscene language in public spaces? We're asking you to share your responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also on WhatsApp 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's I quote.
All right, so today's I quote says, let's bring it up real quick. All right, today's I quote says, if we don't train our children, the world will. Stay present, stay prayerful, and shape their hearts before the screen does.
Okay, good morning, Joka.
Good morning.
Yeah, indeed, another apt quote,
I agree.
which is, of course, relevant to the second watch.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the meantime, listeners, stay tuned for the first watch after this break.
Jamaica and its workforce are advancing quickly. Life-changing opportunities are arising. You need training and support. We are the Renewed Heart NSTA Trust, committed to providing new and emerging skills training and opportunities. Come to Heart. We'll help you claim your place in the workforce of the future.
Seen a lot of our customers make some good moves over the years. Whether it's sharing a hug with a friend you haven't seen in a long time or sharing a meal, Grace has been there. So let's keep making these moments together, because rest assured, every time you choose Grace, you know you're making a good move.
Always a good move when you're moving with Grace.
The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, in partnership with Vinci Construction Grand Projects, will host the official launch of the Western Resilience Water Project and groundbreaking ceremony Phase 1, Friday, July 4, beginning at 2 p.m. at the Davis Penn Football Field in Trelawney. Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, will deliver the keynote address. This project will mark the beginning of one of the most transformative and critical infrastructure undertakings in Jamaica's most recent history that will provide a sustainable, reliable supply of potable water for residents all across Jamaica. That's the official launch of the Western Resilient Water Project and groundbreaking ceremony for Phase 1, Friday, July 4, beginning at 2 p.m. Listen live on Love 101 FM, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, today we're tackling another controversial and timely issue. Are our laws against the use of obscene language outdated? And the question comes into sharper focus following recent public outcry over the use of profane language on a political platform by a senior government official. And while some argue that such expressions are protected under free speech, others believe they erode public decency and set a dangerous precedent, especially when coming from national leaders. This morning, we'll explore whether the law still fits our times and whether it is applied fairly. And in so doing, we have online Emil Leiber, attorney at law, and we are hoped to be joined by another guest shortly, all being well. Good morning to you, Mr. Leiber.
Good morning, Reverend. How are you?
I am well. Good to have you on with us again.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Now, for the record, legally speaking, what really constitutes obscene language? And in a nutshell, what do our laws state in that regard?
Well, the obscene language is governed by the Town and Communities Act, which is an act from the 1800s.
Hmm.
The obscene language has progressed. I'm not clear whether in the 1800s what would have constituted obscene language. Perhaps damn might have been an obscene
Hmm.
term at
Yeah,
that time.
right.
No, it is perhaps some other word. So I think obscene is really a question for the time. So that aspect of the interpretation of the law, I think, changes because it is not defined in the legislation.
Oh. So, any idea of the word in way you could just give us a little taste of it? I mean, how is that? Are the words obscene stated in the law or some other terminology?
Yes. So it speaks to things like you obscene figure, drawing, painting, representation, sing or profane, indecent or obscene song or ballad, or write or draw any indecent or obscene word, figure, or representation,
Mm-hmm.
or, to the applicable part, use any profane, indecent, or obscene language. So those are the type of words that the legislation uses: profane, indecent, or obscene.
So, it it sounds to me very subjective. Eh? I mean,
Well, to an extent, but
yeah.
there's a concept of what I call judicial knowledge. That judges are people too, and so they know any adult. I think of reasonable knowledge will hear and know whether something constitutes an obscene word or not. So usually it would fall under the nomenclature of bad words.
Yes.
It would certainly be accepted to be obscene language.
And it's therefore a cultural phenomenon. Because different cultures use different words in different ways with different meanings, correct?
Which is true, which is true, which is true. Because in Barbados, I remember when I was studying in school, they have a different meaning for the term buller or bullock
Oh, yes.
than,
Oh,
than, we,
yes. Oh, yes.
than we do. So,
Yes.
yes, I agree there is some level of cultural subjectivity to that.
Yes. And the penalties so far, Mr. Leiber, what are they? Can you share
It's
those with
a
us?
whole $1,000 the first time, and it is $1,500 the second time if you commit a second offense. However, I think what is noticeable about legislation under this act is that a constable can take you into custody without warrant. And there is a period of incarceration of up to 30 days.
Hmm.
So if it is committed, if the offense is committed in the view of the constable can, take charge of you.
Hmm. What is your assessment of the use and the tolerance of obscene language in Jamaica today? Is it that we have become desensitized?
Yes, I think desensitization is an aspect of it because with the proliferation of social media. So at one point, for example, you would have the local television stations, which were kind of closely monitored in terms of what content they could display.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had cable TV, and you also had some limitations on that, although less. And then now with social media, you can be exposed to anything you want at any time,
Yes.
that with any content.
Right.
And so this whole concept of regulating the content that people are exposed to, is basically a thing of the past.
Hmm. And as you mentioned, the past, in your view, are our laws with the use of obscene language outdated? You mentioned 1800 in terms of the genesis of this law, and we are hundreds of years before that. No, ahead of that. Is it outdated in your view, Mr. Leiber?
Well, it was originally created, it was amended in the 90s, in 95. So certainly up to that point, it was reviewed and determined that, that particular section of legislation was not in fact amended. So certainly the view of Parliament up to the 90s was that it should remain a part of our legislation. No, I do think, that there should be some guidance in terms of what we can say in public. For example, the right to freedom of expression is not unfettered. So, you know that you don't want to hate speech and those types of things. I think we can all agree. Racial and other things and religious, statements that could incite violence. So there is still relevance and scope to regulating speech. Speech should not be fully unregulated. But I think, again, it's a question of also the offense and the crime. So if it is that, you are fined $1,000, I don't think that is that great a sanction. It's really just a recognition that, it's something you should not do.
Well, at the same time, it goes down as an offense, a breach of the law, and that could affect other things going forward, correct?
Yes, but the thing with the law, is that it should be a balance, because the question is, what is the prejudice to you to say that in a public space? Remember, this doesn't speak to your private language in your own house and speaking with your friends. This legislation governs behavior in public, right? And so in a public space, why do you need to use obscene language in order to express yourself? So perhaps it could well be that there could be some literary expression, if it is that it is reflective of a certain art form and so on. But, every day we choose the words that we use to communicate. So the question is, do I have to use those words in order to communicate effectively? Am I being prejudiced by virtue of not being permitted to speak those words in public? And then you also have the context of exposure to minors. There are minor children who perhaps we could all agree we would not want to parrot words, and the fact is that when people say things in public, particularly at a certain level, they're seen to be examples, of what the rest of the country or how other people and children should consider acceptable. And, so while we may say, okay, fine, we won't regulate certain types of perhaps artistic form, perhaps in other ways it should still be regulated. So I don't think it should be an unfettered situation where you can come and say anything you want.
Yeah, stick a pin right there, Emil Leiber. Interesting discussion so far. We'll be right back to hear more.
this Emancipation Day, experience a night of powerful praise and purpose. CC Winans brings her More Than This tour to Jamaica with Chevelle Franklin, Kevin Downswell, Prince Saj, John Mark Wigan, hosted by IT Ellis and Nadine Blair. Gates open 2 p.m., showtime 5 p.m. Tickets at select outlets island-wide or online at spuropen.com. Follow at More Than This Jamaica on Instagram for updates. CC Winans, More Than This, concert with a cause. Friday, August 1, Kings House East Lawns.
The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, in partnership with Vinci Construction Grant Projects, will host the official launch of the Western Resilience Water Project and groundbreaking ceremony Phase 1, Friday, July 4, beginning at 2 p.m. at the Davis Penn Football Field in Trelawney. Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, will deliver the keynote address. This project will mark the beginning of one of the most transformative and critical infrastructure undertakings in Jamaica's most recent history that will provide a sustainable, reliable supply of potable water for residents all across Jamaica. That's the official launch of the Western Resilient Water Project and groundbreaking ceremony for Phase 1, Friday, July 4, beginning at 2 p.m. Listen live on Love 101 FM, the family station.
You're invited to listen to Encounter, presented by the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches, every Thursday at 10 p.m. First Thursdays, the New United Bible Way Church of God with Reverend Dr. Jasmine Brown. Every second Thursday, Apostle Dr. Elaine Richards, Public Relations Officer, Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches, and Women of God in Service, Wojis Ministries International. Every third Thursday, Senior Pastor Fitzroy Carr, Praise Deliverance Ministry. Every fourth Thursday, Reverend Dr. Leonie Samuels, pastor at the Richmond New Testament Church of God in St. Mary. And on fifth Thursdays, Reverend Dr. Ruthlyn McClarty, Kingdom Covenant Family Church. That's Encounter, presented by the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches, every Thursday at 10 p.m. right here on the family station, Love 101.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. And this is the first watch. We are asking, are our laws against the use of obscene language outdated? Are our laws against the use of obscene language outdated? And in so doing, we have online Emil Leiber, attorney at law, who has been taking us through the paces. Indeed, he has been telling us what the law really states, the penalties, and we have been discussing some of the realities and controversies surrounding the law. Mr. Leiber, still with us?
Yes.
Yeah. There are those, though, I think, who would argue that words are just words and they should not be used as avenues to criminalize individuals. Words are just words.
Well, to that I will say, how would those people respond if someone said to them, "I will kill you"?
Mm-hmm.
Where if words are just words, then that is called that's a criminal threat.
I know in some songs that's actually in it. I mean, persons express themselves in poetry and all of that in all these ways.
No, which is why I would say, my personal view is that there should be some literary exception. So if it is that as part of the message, and part of just as in movies, it is permitted, but they do give ratings to the movies and they do limit who can watch those movies.
Mm.
So again, if you want to create content of literary value, then I don't think you should be prohibited from doing that. Mm-hmm. But it's a question of, and again, the legislation doesn't say that you can never say this ever if you say it in your house that you're under arrest. It's a question of managing the public exposure, because the act doesn't speak to just that alone. it spoke to how you can, ride your horse and that type of thing. It was really it was meant to govern how
Yes,
people live together in a village.
yes, yes,
How do you, what is acceptable within the village? There was really kind of guidelines for how to live together.
yes,
Yeah, and so I said it could well be updated. It was last, amended in the 90s.
yes,
And so, there may well be scope to update it and, perhaps create greater exceptions.
yes,
But I'm not one for full deregulation.
yes. And of course, I've heard persons argue that, when Bob Marley song, I feel like bombing a church. You know, how do you interpret that today?
Well, that one is an interesting example, but I would say that would be a literary type of exception rather than
Exception.
an inciting to violence, because there are ways to express, things that might appear violent, but if you take it within the context of the overall, piece,
Yes,
it creates a different impression.
yes. And you've been speaking about exceptions. There are those who believe our nation um is based on double standards, especially when you realize or recognize that legal implications do not seem to apply to some persons when they use obscene language in public. What's your view on that?
Well, certainly in terms of the legislation, all are supposed to be equal before the law. No, we know the reality that is not always the case. And if there is an element of discretion that the constabulary tends to have, unless it is a major crime. If you have ever been stopped by the police, sometimes they'll exercise the discretion in your favor. Sometimes not. So there is an element of discretion in the whole enterprise. But yes, it is perhaps not unrightly stated that the application of the law is not always equal.
No, you are raising an interesting point there, Mr. Leiber, perhaps an answerness, because element of discretion. Is that actually stated in the law?
It's not stated well in this particular piece of legislation. There'll be other legislation that governs the constabulary. But let's say, for example, there's a report of an attempted murder and somebody's speeding, then you might leave the person who is speeding and go and after the attempted murderer.
Hmm.
You know, so there's always going to be an element of, okay, what do I prioritize? And even concepts of, um, state resources that are going to be used for things along these lines. So yes, whenever there's some level of discretion, there's always a potential for abuse. But that should also be regulated as well, in terms of is somebody actually doing their job, or are they not doing their job in the appropriate way?
Hmm. And
So
yeah, I,
yeah.
I like the example you use in terms of the police chasing someone, but and I guess other examples like someone is driving an injured person, an ill person to the hospital and breaking the stoplight. I guess those are some of the examples you could use. In the case of a public platform, persons making these utterances, these unseen obscene languages used. I mean, it's clear. How would discretion come into that?
Well, I think the legislation again speaks to taking place in the presence of the constables. So there have been stage shows and so on where the police have been present and they have walked the artist off the stage.
Yes, I've heard of
Um,
that. Yes,
and they have locked them up.
yes. So there are
So and
persons asking why in this case that perhaps didn't occur in the recent highlighted case or situation.
well, the relationship between police officers and parliamentarians is interesting because police officers there are assigned to protect the parliamentarians. They're close protection officer. The police officers are really almost there subject to the instruction of the parliamentarians. Technically, they report within the high command and things like that. But the presence of police in parliament are for the purpose primarily of protecting the politicians and facilitating parliament and other things taking place. So it's
Therefore,
it's not
what?
the most independent of situations. Let me put it that way.
But the law is the law. The people are saying, regardless, the law is the law. It doesn't matter who you are. Eh?
Well, again, if you're being actually real, that would not assist in the advancement of any constable. But I'll leave that one alone. I won't go any further on that one.
All right. On the international scene, I'm not sure we had prepped you for this question, but we have a president of a nation abroad who seem to be able to spout expletives without any much people saying anything actually. How do we square in terms of that as a nation, perhaps even in the region? Is it only Jamaica having a hang up about obscene language?
Well, every country has its own laws, but certainly in a particular nation not far from us, that the leader of that nation is being given more and more unfettered power by the court.
Mm.
But there is a concept, when you have your nation's leader, of what's that called, preserving them from the distraction when they are supposed to be running the nation. So one of the ways in which, the law is never perfect, but, I said the law should not be an ass. But it really should balance the greater public good against, private difficulties. The question is, if you had your president charged with, offenses before the court, that president's focus now would be on defending himself and not on running the country. And so is the greater good to have that president be focused on running the country, and then, as they would say, you sort out other things afterwards.
So the end justifies the means.
Not always. Not always. Not
That
always.
seems to be the line of argument in these cases, though, or examples.
To a degree, yes, to a degree, because there's always, even as I said, for Jamaica within our constitutional system is, reasonably required in a fair and democratic society. So we are not completely free to say and do anything we want, because we have to live together as people.
Mm.
When it is you are required to wear clothes in public,
Mm-hmm.
right? You might feel that you're a nudist,
Mm-hmm.
and this is your natural self and how, you came out of your mother's womb.
Mm-hmm.
But when it is that you interact with other members of the public, you have to, conform in a certain way.
Yes.
But the application of the law and how it applies to some and not others is something I think we'll be debating for another 100 years.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever have the answer to that. Even in communist society, where it's based on equality of all being equal, animal farms, some are more equal than others.
Yeah. Well,
we have to. It's just a reality.
we have to leave it there. To use a cricket analogy, Mr. Emil Leiber, you batted well at the crease this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having us.
Man.
Have a safe and productive day.
Okay.
Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
Start your journey with a JN Small Business Loan with small business loans as little as $10,000 and up to $4 million. The time by JN Small Business Loan is
7:30.
Get ready for the 4th edition of the Life Fest Pop-Up Market. Join us on Sunday, July 6, 2025 at Hope Gardens in Kingston from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. for a fun-filled, family-friendly experience. Come out and enjoy the Art Village, Farmers Market, and Food Pavilion. Shop for clothes, plants, skin and hair care products, wellness supplies, and more. This vibrant marketplace is all about supporting small businesses. Come connect, shop, and be inspired. It's a full day of fun, food, and family. Don't miss the Life Fest Pop-Up Market, Sunday, July 6, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Hope Gardens.
Don't let freshness ditch you when you need it the most. Wash your clothes with Downy Softener to keep dazzling everyone around you from day to night. Try Downy Softener now.
Jamaica, your favorite gospel show on television, the Jamaica Gospel Star, is now on TVJ. God's people on the move. Tune in for powerful performances to lift your spirit and move your soul. 10 finalists, 4 elimination rounds. When the dust settles, only one will be left standing as the 2025 Jamaica Gospel Star. Sundays, 8 p.m. on TVJ, starting July 6th. Powered by Sagicor, building trust one generation at a time.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. Well, Finance Ministry pulls statement on FID selection controversy. Also, we are seeing that Dr. Clark wants fairer approach to global finance and outstanding pension funds to be paid this week. And then we also see that the political ombudsman remains vigilant as election campaigning intensifies. Those are some of the major headlines across the board in regards to our major newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. Should public figures, musicians and others be fined or penalized for using obscene language in public spaces? We're asking you to leave a comment on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. Soon come back.
The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, in partnership with Vinci Construction Grand Projects, will host the official launch of the Western Resilience Water Project and groundbreaking ceremony Phase 1, Friday, July 4, beginning at 2 p.m. at the Davis Penn Football Field in Trelawney. Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, will deliver the keynote address. This project will mark the beginning of one of the most transformative and critical infrastructure undertakings in Jamaica's most recent history that will provide a sustainable, reliable supply of potable water for residents all across Jamaica. That's the official launch of the Western Resilient Water Project and groundbreaking ceremony for Phase 1, Friday, July 4, beginning at 2 p.m. Listen live on Love 101 FM, the family station. Get your CC Winans tickets right here at Love 101, 821 Hagley Park Road, $6,000 regular and $20,000 VIP. Don't miss out!
Jamaica eyes were built with fire, passion and vibes, and through it all there's a glow inside. Let's keep our shine alive.
From the market to the factory floors, from the hillside green to golden shores,
we're reaching heights, our energy that lights the sky.
JPS, power in what matters.
Mama work hard, for real.
She do the most to send me and my brother go school. So, the dream was always to go to university. Well, I fulfilled 2 dreams with 1 Jane Bank savings plan, you know. I further my education and I make mama proud.
Save so you can make the part, travel far, graduate like a star.
Stop wishing you could. With your Jane Bank savings, you absolutely can. Jane Bank will help you find a way.
You're invited to listen to Encounter, presented by the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches, every Thursday at 10 p.m. First Thursdays, the New United Bible Way Church of God with Reverend Dr. Jasmine Brown. Every second Thursday, Apostle Dr. Elaine Richards, Public Relations Officer, Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches, and Women of God in Service, Wojis Ministries International. Every third Thursday, Senior Pastor Fitzroy Carr, Praise Deliverance Ministry. Every fourth Thursday, Reverend Dr. Leonie Samuels, pastor at the Richmond New Testament Church of God in St. Mary. And on fifth Thursdays, Reverend Dr. Ruthlyn McClarty, Kingdom Covenant Family Church. That's Encounter, presented by the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches, every Thursday at 10 p.m. right here on the family station, Love 101.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now join Jokal for a look at how our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp friends answer today's question: should public figures, musicians, and others be fined or penalized for using obscene language in public spaces? Jokal.
All right, so we have some responses. The one here comes from Faith. Faith says, "Good morning. All who use them should be. Self-control is crucial. Blessing." She says yes in all caps. Edna from Montego Bay Center of West North. Let's hear from her.
Good morning, morning wash. Good morning, love and one listeners and staff. For me, I think people that use obscene word should be charged. They should. You understand? It's not all about freedom of speech or anything. Your respect goes a far way. You understand? And if you are out there, especially if you are public figures, you must know what to come out of your mouth. Once ago, obscene words, especially words that they call bad words also, when we were growing up, they said police here, you use those words, you're going to be locked up, charged. They must be charged, man. Come on, we need some decency, we need moral to come back. We need moral. Moral has been breaking down so much, we need it back. Yes, man. Some form of moral must be in place. People can't be doing as I ever like, so be it. Come on.
All right, that's Edna. Cherry from Spanish Town says, yes, they should be penalized. The law is for us all as Jamaican citizens, not for some and not for others. Persons look up to public figures. We must be careful regarding the public and what we put out in there and what we represent and also what we are affiliated to. Yeah, so those are the responses so far.
All right. Well, some serious comments there. Thank you very much, those who responded. Well, in this our second watch, we are sounding the alarm on a growing but often hidden crisis: addiction in the digital age, and in particular the rising impact of pornography addiction on Jamaican families. Now, this was highlighted 2 days ago in an Observer report entitled Porn Addiction Warning. So, how serious is the threat? And what can and should we do about it? Well, to answer these and other related questions, we have joining us Dr. Sydney McGill, who is a family therapist, and Andre Allen Casey, counseling psychologist. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning.
Great. Good to have you both with us. Now, of course, gentlemen, this, of course, is a very sensitive topic, and we are dealing with it on the Morning Watch on Morning Radio. So, listeners, we are aware of that, and we will therefore be guarded in the words we use. Now, Dr. McGill, before we delve into the meat of our discussion, let me ask you what I regard as a fundamental question. What really is addiction? And generally speaking, what are the signs and symptoms? Generally speaking.
Okay. Well, addiction is a disorder. It's a behavioral disorder. In other words, it's chronic and it keeps on recurring. It's a compulsive attachment to a substance or a behavior that gives you some kind of reward. You know, I mean, let's call it dopamine reward. And so it's compulsive and obsessive. So you're thinking of it all the time and you want to do it as much as you can because it makes you feel good, at least for a while. Then just trying to look at it from a basic layman's term. Now, I think all of us, to some degree, have some kind of compulsive behavior. Yeah. That gives us some kind of pleasure. But then it does not disrupt our relationships. It doesn't disrupt our work schedule, you know, and the way how we go about doing stuff. It's just a part of so many other things that we do. But when it gets really bad, it's when it disrupts everything, every normal behavior in our lives. And all that, it becomes a god to that person. And everything that person does it has to do or surrounds the whole thing of getting back into that behavior and getting the reward.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what it is.
Yeah, good. Andre Allen Casey, generally speaking, what are the causes or factors which influence addiction, would you say?
Oh, wow. I mean, there are several things that could have, that can, I like to say, cause or influence it. For me, one of the most important things is early exposure. You know, if as abuse, even sexual abuse, where children are concerned, definitely can contribute toward pornography, sexual addiction. It could also be a mental health problem that a person would have developed. That could also contribute towards it. But the early exposure, I'd want to say, and the desensitization of the value of who a woman and a man is. And so, you know, if women and men are looked at as objects of pleasure, only as objects of pleasure, then no real relationship can be had or can be formed with that person's concern. So it's only for titillization, if I can use that word. It's only for satisfying the sensation. And if that's all you are to me, then in truth and in fact, I can't have any real connection with this person because it is all about the pleasure that I can achieve in having this relationship with this person. So it really objectifies individuals in relationships. And so that kind of early exposure and understanding and communication is leveled at young people, at our children. And I did mention even sexual abuse. Then really and truly, these things contribute to why you can have an addiction.
Yes.
I would take it further than that. That anything can become an addict. You can get addicted to anything, and that basically, this is just my view, that addiction is really a symptom of a relationship deficit. I mean, I look at all addiction as such.
Tell you what, Dr. McGill, we're up on a break. We don't want to break your thought any further, so we'll be right back after this break.
The time by Grace Good Move is
7:45.
Get ready to take a trip down memory lane this Throwback Thursday. Inside Alive 1 to 5 with yours truly, Sarah and the Chirpy One. Tune in at 1:45 for a whirlwind of wordplay with Menticize. Prayer Warriors unite! Fuel your faith and ignite your spirit at 2 p.m. with Prayer Blast. At 2:15 inside Piece of the Past, we look at something from the past. At 3 p.m., take a musical trip back in time with our Throwback Thursday playlist. At 4:30, stick and stay for more fun coming your way as Auntie Vashti wraps things up with the Small People Show. All this and more will come alive this Throwback Thursday with me, Sarah and the Chirpy One on the family station, Love 101.
Come on now, move. You're alive. Everybody move. We're alive. Come on now, move.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. And this is the second watch. We are looking at addiction. And in so doing, we have online Dr. Sidney McGill, family therapist, and Andre Allen Casey, counseling psychologist. So far in our discussion, these gentlemen have told us or reminded us of the fact that addiction is really a behavioral disorder, compulsive attachment that gives some kind of reward. And, some of the causes or factors have to do with early exposure, sexual abuse, mental health problems, and how we value objects of pleasure. And there was emphasis in regards to early exposure. And for the question in terms of those factors, Dr. Sidney McGill, before the break, was also adding his thoughts. Please continue, Dr. McGill.
Yeah. I mean, all of my experience is working with persons who suffer from some kind of moderate addiction or severe addiction. The root cause tends to be relationship issue, whether it's going to be a sexual abuse, where I'm violated by someone who was supposed to be protecting me, or in a recent case I had here, someone who denied their sexual orientation, but once they have fully accepted it, then the addiction just dissipates.
Yeah.
But then when I look at the orientation issue, recognize that there is a major issue with son and father, and the need for this boy to be connected to his father who has disowned him.
Yeah.
So you see, I've always seen it as when I look at an addiction, I'm looking at something. I want to figure out where is the origin. Where is this all coming from?
Right.
So that we're not just trying to fix an alcohol issue or a ganja issue or whatever cocaine issue.
Right.
Yeah, but you get into the root cause of all of this.
Yes. And sometimes that takes a lot of time and effort, correct?
Yes. Sometimes it happens within a few months, and sometimes several years, and sometimes a lifetime.
Wow.
Because of the relapsing nature of the addiction, you might be fine for 10 years. But then you are always vulnerable, whether you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and you just happen to be around the drug or people who use the drug. It's easy to go back into a relapse. So that's why we use the word recovering. You're never fully recovered. Give thanks for each day that you abstain.
Yes. Andre Allen Casey, with due consideration for the fact we are still on morning radio, what makes porn, for example, such a powerful addictive force?
Well, Dr. McGill had hinted at it, or even stated it, when he mentioned that neurotransmitter that gives pleasure and reward, the dopamine release or the dopamine rush, as some folks would say. And I think, by and large, that is one of the things that makes it so pornography specifically known. so powerful and addictive because it is it really stimulates a pleasure sensor or center, I should say, in the brain. And so once a person watches this, it triggers this dopamine rush and pleasure reward. And so the constant craving of this rush can lead to severe pornography addiction. But not only that, after a while, there seems to be where the person just needs more. Somebody says that pornography is like a cocaine addiction. But the difference with cocaine addiction rather and pornography is the fact that with cocaine you want more. With pornography, you not only want more, but you want something different. And so the idea here is that I want to have a different experience to get the same kind of affect. It must be harder. It must be, degrading, if I can use that word. And so this is why it becomes, it is powerful and addictive because it's not just more, but it's something different. And so it continues. And of course, the neurotransmitters are forging a pathway that says, if you want the pleasure, this is what you need to do. And that's what you're going to constantly go after to get the same kind of reward.
Serious stuff. Dr. McGill, according to the aforementioned Observer article, in a public presentation, you reportedly connected porn addiction to declining birth rates and the breakdown in relationships. How so?
Okay. All right. Well, if you look at on the whole technology and the use of it and how we have adapted and become slaves to these devices, you begin to realize, and this is not Jamaica, this is a global concern, that we spend so much more time in front of our devices, our screens, more than we interact with other fellow human beings. And so you have what's happening is that children are not learning how to relate in a empathetic, understanding, healthy way with their peers or with adults, etc. So the pro-social skills of especially children and young adults, there is a problem there, and so you find a lot of young men are having difficulty learning. How to relate to a woman, and so it's so much easier to turn your screen on, which you relate very well with, and go to a porn site that has literally millions of different videos that you can pick, choose, and refuse. And they're getting more or less the same kind of sexual intense excitement that they would engaging sexually with a woman, except that there's no body there. But at some point, they will get some kind of toy. They will get they'll get a blown up or a vagina or whatever to continue the process, and they continue, and then if they want to have actual sex, then you can always purchase it.
Declining birth rates.
So of course, yes, because their relationships are being affected adversely because of the obsessive use of our devices.
Continue, Doc. That's it? Okay. Interested. Gentlemen, solutions. What should we do or not do in light of all that we have said so far? This, of course, is a complex issue, but yet still one that is concerning over the years. Andre Allen Casey, you first. What should we do as a nation or not do?
Well, I would say I want to start off with, and this gets on away, but let me hurry up here. I think that we have failed our young people. I go back to the same early exposure. And and therefore we need to take a lot of responsibility in this area. We have normalized nakedness and the explicit portrayal of sexual subject matter for the purpose of sexual gratification, of course. And so pornography, it is used in so much different media, books, magazines, postcards, whatever, animation, painting, drawing, sculpture, not to mention sculpture.
Oh, yes, emancipation.
and like I said, and so, for us to help them, I think we need to stop expose them, one, and also be the kind of example. I'm talking about especially parents now. Be the kind of example that will meet God's approval. I think so rather than saying look at what our children are doing, maybe we should start with what kind of boundaries are we setting up? Are we creating emotional intelligence in our children to let them know that okay, you can make these choices or don't make these choices, and also show the adverse effects of making bad choices.
Yes, explain to them why.
Help them to inform the feeling rather than follow it.
Yeah, interesting. Dr. McGill, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I go back again to the whole issue of quality relationships that we have, and in particular with children, because parents are also adversely affected by the overwhelming thrust of technology and in our lives, and so they have less time. In fact, it is the tablet that is parenting the child more now. And so I think that the solution has to be that parents need to, one, begin to recognize that the technology is always going to be with us and learn to befriend it in a way, get to know it so that they can determine, because the children tend to know more about the technology than the parent. And so, one, we need to set boundaries as was just said a while ago. Set boundaries. And I'm thinking that Ministry of Education or the government needs to get involved in this way. I'm sorry. I mean, I see that's happening in China. Fantastic. It's not happening in the US or the UK yet. But because we're so unfamiliar, we don't know where this thing is going, and it's affecting our lives, and we have little control over it. I think that the experts who know the advantages and disadvantages more keenly than us need to advise the government, and the government needs to get all the experts around, including pastors and
both of you.
Yes. Well.
Continue, Dr.
Yes,
McGill,
right. And come up with some laws, come up with some ways of how we're going to, so that this thing doesn't destroy our family units. Because it has been doing, the slavery has been doing a lot of that before, and so many other factors have been destroying the unit of the family, which is going to destroy the whole country. So it's an important thing that we need to look at, or before it becomes too late.
Yeah, of course.
I know the church is doing its stuff. The churches. The church is doing a lot.
Okay, we need to do
Praise
more.
God for the church.
We need to do more.
All the denominations, I see them. At least if it's not for changing lives, it is bringing groups together. It is people relating.
Hear the passion, Doc. Hear the passion. We're out of time, though. All right, gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining us. Interesting, informative, and insightful discussion. Have a safe and productive day. Great. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. For information or get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596-7. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Nadine Blair, who did a great job this week. Join Mr. Stokely Marshall next week as he continues to look at the issues of the day. I'm Dylan Toussaint, reminding you to be purposeful, faithful, thankful, and of course, watchful as I return you to love in the morning.
you can live life to the fullest with HIV.